Hey everybody, it's January 9th, 2019, and Bob's been recording a new series we're going to call Alien Contacts and Bob's Life. This is number 5.
Okay. By the way, I just became aware of Michael over to my right with a brief smile on his face. We were talking about these strange writings that had started through me. Well, after the third one I said, this is enough. It was like an intro and then 2, I'm going to call them letters. You'll find out why. I just didn't like the difference that I felt between this wonderful sensation when it was riding through me and then going back to Clark Kent, Bob Nelson, when it stopped. Don't get me wrong, I happen to think Bob Nelson's terrific. But at that time, there was such a difference between the feeling I had when the writing was happening and then before and afterwards. So I just said, enough of this, enough. So I folded up the papers, put them in my closet. About that time, one evening, I'm having dinner with some friends of mine from some of the different metaphysics groups and this test pilot engineer for Piper. And all of a sudden I got this weird, strange feeling like my aura was doing funny things that I didn't understand. The electric lights in the place started flickering and going crazy. And I had ordered like a burger, you know, what am I trying to say, chopped steak. And here I'm noticing the lights while I'm trying to cut this burger, and all of a sudden the knife won't cut. And I'm thinking, oh, there wouldn't be bone in here. What in the heck is going on? I looked down and the knife had gone from being perfectly straight to a perfect letter Z. No wonder it wouldn't cut. And at that point, the lights continued flickering and I felt kind of weak and strange, and I said, look, I want to go sit in the car. My friend tried to say, no, come on, you've wanted this, you wanted Silverwork to bend for you, now it's bending. And now you're not happy. And I said, it's not that, I feel weird and I don't like the fact that the lights are flickering around this place the way they are at the time this happened. So I just said, I want to go sit in your car. So he gave me the keys and I went and sat in his car till everybody was through with their meal, and then he came out and we left. Another restaurant scene at the same time, in that same period of time. This too, I believe, was near Apopka, Florida. And we were at a Howard Johnson's. It was in the evening after a fly-in day. The fly-in is where they have aircrafts that come in and give people rides, and pilots get together and swap stories back and forth, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun, it's neat. And the airplanes are just an excuse to bring people together, which is good. So we had gone out to eat at this Howard Johnson's. My friend also had a lady friend of his whom he had known since high school. Her name was Sarah. And all along the walls in this place there were these really beautiful, popular back then, I don't know about now, but stained copper artworks. Some of them looked like peacocks, some of them looked like fish. The peacocks would have the three-dimensional part of the front part of the body coming out into the air, and then the back part would be the tail feathers stained different colors that were up against the wall. The reason I'm describing, you'll find out. Well, we finished our meal, got ready to pay out. My engineer friend went to the men's room. Sarah's standing off about 2 yards away from me. And I said, "Hey, Sarah." And I jokingly, and I do mean jokingly, I didn't even watch what I was doing, passed my hair, that's great. I passed my hand in the air around the peacock feathers of one of these art pieces. Like I said, I wasn't watching what I was doing because I didn't expect anything to happen. I was making a joke. As if I was trying to bend those things. Sarah stands there and does one of these numbers. Like that, and I thought she was kidding, and I was laughing, and she wasn't. And I said, "What?" And all she could do was this. Point at it. I turned and looked, and every other metal feather that had been flat against the wall before was bent out into the room. They didn't apparently just bend slowly, they just were flat 1 millisecond and boom, different the next millisecond. My friend comes out of the men's room, takes one look at his lady friend and looks over at me and says, "What'd you do?" And I said, "Well, first of all, it was a joke. Please understand it was a joke." And then I pointed like that. He took one look at it, did a double take. After that, I got a half-hour's lecture why I shouldn't have done that. These were just... You know, people in the realm of psychic phenomena will tell you how you have to concentrate or how you have to weave some sort of spell. No and no. You don't. You just have to be childlike, not childish, not selfish. Childlike. Big difference. Like a child who doesn't want to do any harm or anything, just is having some fun. Okay. This leads us to the mid-1980s. One day, one Saturday morning, I'm making my bed. I feel Michael's presence. And I'm thinking, what now? Not a nice way to greet somebody, is it? What now? And he says, "Something wonderful is about to happen. Very soon you will be doing what you're about here." I said, "Look, I've already been doing what I'm about here. I do healing work, I try to help people, so I don't know how much better it gets than that." And he said, "You will meet someone in the very near future who will help you get started on something you need to do that is part of your work here in this life." And I said, "Yeah, right, wonderful." And then he said, "If you don't believe me, turn your radio on. The announcer will interrupt the program making an announcement that NASA has just discovered or has just announced the discovery of a white dwarf star in your part of the galaxy, in your sector of the galaxy, which is a rare find, a rare phenomena." Then he says, "Oh, by the way, it wasn't there before I told you." Yeah, think over what all this means. Just let it mull over a little bit. So I thought, well, heck, what do I have to lose? I turned on the radio, thinking nothing would happen, and I continued making my bed. 5 minutes later, the announcer interrupts the program, word for word. we have an announcement that NASA has just announced the discovery of a white dwarf star in our sector of the galaxy, which is a rare phenomena. Okay, a couple months later, I met a guy who was working for one of the electronics stores in the city where I live. They also sold computers. And the HRS staff where I was working at the shelter workshop at the time, when I was teaching adult basic academics there, had just bought computers from this particular store. Well, this guy came to teach the staff how to use them because most of the people there were not computer literate. I had taught myself basics and expanded basics. I even made software that I was using to keep track of my students' progress. And this one afternoon I'm clicking away at the end of the day after the adult clients had left. Unpaid time, but I'm sitting there inputting data from students' progress during the day. All of a sudden this guy walks in and says, I've got something you might be interested in. And then it dawned on me and I said, oh no. He said, what? I said, well, never mind what. And he wanted to sell me some sort of self-help course of some sort. And I remember thinking, well, I think I can work this to my advantage to get him out of here in 5 minutes or less, and I can get my work done and go home. So he said, what are some of your skills? Obviously you know how to use a computer, and evidently you're able to teach. What are other skills? And I said, oh, I draw. Oh, what do you draw? Oh, otherworldly stuff, otherworldly beings like angels. And I started looking at my watch, thinking, any minute now he's going to say, well, have a nice day, bye-bye. And he didn't. And then he said, well, how do you draw angels? And I said, well, I sort of am friends with an angel. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, the Archangel Michael, he's a teacher of mine. Do you deal with Michael? Yeah. At that point, he asked how I had any contact with him. I explained I meditated, stuff like that. I also told him I channeled Michael, which I do, and I thought that would have him leaving in, seconds instead of minutes. He didn't. He stayed there. All my efforts to get him to leave didn't work, and what it boiled down to was I did a 2-hour channeling of Michael that afternoon for him. Michael was answering his questions before he could even ask them. That night, I went over to his apartment. He asked me to do another channeling. I did. During that channeling, Michael made mention of some folded up papers in my closet for me to get those out and show them to him. So I had to promise that I would do that. Went back home. That night I dug out the papers. My closet was so cluttered. Kind of like taking your life in your hands when you walk in the door, and put your hands over your head and hold the door open and hope nothing hits you. Anyway, I dug the papers out. They were actually in good condition. I was surprised they were in that good a condition. Next day, this guy comes over to visit me. I showed him the pages. He said, here. And he starts reading and gasping over and over. And he said, you know who this is? And I said, yeah, it's God. He says, yeah, he just says, oh yeah, it's got like there's nothing to it. And he says, you've got to do more of this. And I said, no, I don't. And I explained why I quit working with it, because as I've already explained. Anyway, the only way I could get him to leave my house that evening was by promising that I would sit down with a piece of paper and a pen to see if anything would write through at all. He left. After he left, I cheated. Well, I tried to cheat. I got a piece of art paper. It's kind of textured and rough, you know, and a very sharpened pencil. I knew the friction wouldn't let it move. And I could honestly tell the guy the next day I tried, but nothing happened. And so I'm sitting there expecting nothing to happen, and all of a sudden the damn pencil starts moving. And it's a 2 or 3 line situation. Glad to see the two of you got together. Hope you'll be willing to continue this project if you wish. And the signature G.O.D. The guy comes to visit the next afternoon after I get home from work. I showed him the paper, and I said, there's nothing to go on here. This is just like 2 or 3 lines. There's nothing to it. It's not even worth continuing the project for, because I really didn't want to do it. First thing he asked is, why did you use this rough art paper? And I just looked at him and I didn't say anything. Then he says, we got to do this. We have the invitation. And I said, that's just it. It's an invitation. I don't have to do it. Well, he finally talked me into agreeing to let it continue. And what resulted was a book called Keyes Love Letters. Remember when I told you you'd understand why I referred to these as letters? Love letters from God. They're not love letters in the sense of gushy, gushy love letters. It's letters like, I'd rather call them life letters, to be honest. It's like God's love enough to show us how we can make life work. To remind us of who we really are. 3.5 months. Day after day after day after day. 1 to 2 letters a day. We started off with it writing through me, and my friend looking over my shoulder and gasping and crying sometimes, and me gasping and crying sometimes at the beauty of what was being written. Then one day he comes over and says, why don't you let it speak through you? To which I said, dude, this is what they put people in rubber rooms for. I said, I do channeling. I channel JFK. I channel Archangel Michael. And I channel an Atlantean son of mine by the name of Yarid. But, not this, no. To which he said, look, we both know you're not crazy. And we'll gauge what comes through. And if the quality or anything changes, we'll just go back to, and I said, no. If the quality or anything changes, we're stopping the project completely, 100%. I had to argue with him for a while, but I got him finally to agree with me. From that on, for the next, I'd say a good 2.5 months, making 3.5 months total, Keyes came through me. God speaking through me. And they're not my words. I don't really think of Keyes as my book. It came through me. But all the way through, I'd be thinking of what the next sentence should be, and a whole different sentence would either be written through me or spoken through me while I'm thinking of a different one. And the high, I was on a high for at least a good 2 years after that. It's like being Superman nonstop. Okay, I believe we're about out of time on this one. When I pick up again, we're going to go into the 90s and more abductions, and then later on, a little after that, into reptilian encounters.